Robert had always been told that money was something you earned, not something you learned. His dad taught him to work hard, save money, and pay bills on time. But Robert's rich dad didn't talk about money that way. He said money was like a river, and if you didn't know how to swim, you'd get swept away. Robert's rich dad taught him how to think about money, how to invest, and how to make it grow. He showed Robert that money wasn't just about working for it, it was about making it work for you. Robert started to see the world differently. He realized that his dad's way of thinking was safe, but it didn't let him grow. His rich dad's way was risky, but it made him powerful. Robert began to ask questions. He wanted to know how to take control of his money, how to build wealth, and how to live a life that wasn't just about making ends meet. He started reading books, talking to people, and learning from his rich dad. He learned about assets and liabilities, about debt and equity, about how to make money from money. He saw that the rich didn't just have more money, they had more knowledge, more freedom, and more control over their lives. Robert felt like he was on the edge of something big. He wasn't sure what was next, but he knew he was heading in the right direction. He had a new way of thinking, and he was ready to take the next step. Robert kept learning from his rich dad, and he started to understand that money wasn't just about having more, it was about making it work for you. He learned that the rich didn't just earn money, they made money earn money. He started to see the difference between things that cost money and things that made money. His rich dad showed him how to buy things that paid for themselves, like a house that rented out or a business that made money every month. Robert started to think about his own future. He wanted to build something that would last, something that would give him freedom and control over his life. He started to look for opportunities, not just jobs. He talked to people who had businesses, asked questions, and tried to learn from their mistakes. He realized that money wasn't just about working hard, it was about working smart. He also started to see how the poor and middle class were stuck in a cycle. They worked for money, but the money didn't work for them. They spent it all, and they never built anything. Robert wanted to break free from that cycle. He wanted to be in control, not just of his money, but of his life. He felt a fire inside him, a drive to learn more, to take risks, and to build something real. He wasn't sure what the future held, but he knew he was on the right path. Robert kept learning and growing. He started reading books about money, not just for fun, but to understand how the rich think and act. He found out that the rich don't just work for money, they make money work for them. They invest, they build, they create. They don't just save money, they make it grow. He read about people who built businesses, bought property, and used money to create more money. He started to see that money wasn't just about having a lot of it, it was about knowing how to use it. He also learned about the different kinds of work. Some people work for money, but others work to learn. The rich work to learn new skills, new ideas, new ways to make money. They don't just follow rules, they make their own. Robert started to think about what kind of work he wanted. He wanted to be in the business of making money, not just working for it. He began to write down his ideas, his goals, and his plans. He wanted to build something that would last, something that would give him freedom and control. He started to take small steps, like learning more about investing, reading more books, and talking to people who had already done it. He wasn't sure what the future would bring, but he knew he was moving in the right direction. Having two dads gave me different ideas about money. One dad was rich, the other poor. Both worked hard and made good money, but they had very different views on how to handle money. The rich dad had a PhD and went to top schools, but the poor dad never finished 8th grade. They both had strong personalities, but they taught me opposite things about money. The rich dad said money is power. He believed in learning how to make money work for you. He taught me to think about money and how to use it. The poor dad said money is the root of all evil. He wanted me to study hard and get a good job so I could earn money. But he didn't teach me how to use money to make more money. I started thinking about what each dad said. I asked myself questions like, why does he say that? I didn't just agree or disagree with one side. I had to choose what I believed. I noticed that the rich dad always said he was rich, even when he was broke. The poor dad always said he wasn't interested in money. I realized that thoughts shape your life. I decided to listen to my rich dad and learn about money. That choice changed everything. I started learning how to make money work for me, not just earn it. The rich dad said money is power. He believed in learning how to make money work for you. He taught me to think about money and how to use it. The poor dad said money is the root of all evil. He wanted me to study hard and get a good job so I could earn money. But he didn't teach me how to use money to make more money. I started thinking about what each dad said. I asked myself questions like, why does he say that? I didn't just agree or disagree with one side. I had to choose what I believed. I noticed that the rich dad always said he was rich, even when he was broke. The poor dad always said he wasn't interested in money. I realized that thoughts shape your life. I decided to listen to my rich dad and learn about money. That choice changed everything. I started learning how to make money work for me, not just earn it. Chapter 1 Lesson 1: The rich don't work for money. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. Dad, can you tell me how to get rich? My dad put down the evening paper. Why do you want to get rich, son? Because today Jimmy's mom drove up in their new Cadillac, and they were going to their beach house for the weekend. He took 3 of his friends, but Mike and I weren't invited. They told us we weren't invited because we were poor kids. They did? My dad asked incredulously. Yeah, they did, I replied in a hurt tone. My dad silently shook his head, pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, and went back to reading the paper. I stood waiting for an answer. The year was 1956. I was 9 years old. By some twist of fate, I attended the same public school where the rich people sent their kids. We were primarily a sugar plantation town. The managers of the plantation and the other affluent people, such as doctors, business owners, and bankers, sent their children to this elementary school. After grade 6, their children were generally sent off to private schools. Because my family lived on one side of the street, I went to this school. Had I lived on the other side of the street, I would have gone to a different school with kids from families more like mine. After grade 6, these kids and I would go on to the public intermediate and high school. There was no private school for them or for me. My dad finally put down the paper. I could tell he was thinking. Well, son, he began slowly. If you want to be rich, you have to learn to make money. How do I make money? I asked. Well, use your head, son, he said, smiling. Even then I knew that really meant, that's all I'm going to tell you, or I don't know the answer, so don't embarrass me. A partnership is formed. The next morning, I told my best friend, Mike, what my dad had said. As best as I could tell, Mike and I were the only poor kids in this school. Mike was also in this school by a twist of fate. Someone had drawn a jog in the line for the school district, and we wound up in school with the rich kids. We weren't really poor, but we felt as if we were because all the other boys had new baseball gloves, new bicycles, new everything. Mom and Dad provided us with the basics, like food, shelter, and clothes. But that was about it. My dad used to say, if you want something, work for it. We wanted things. So here's what happened next. Mike's dad, the rich dad, offered to teach me how to make money, but not in a classroom. He said I had to work for him, and if I didn't work, he wouldn't teach me. I agreed, even though I was nervous. We started working at his little store, cleaning cans and dealing with dust and heat. It was really boring and hard, and after a few weeks, I got fed up. I wanted to quit because I wasn't learning anything and I was only getting 10 cents an hour. Mike told me to wait and that his dad would explain everything on Saturday. On Saturday, I went to talk to Mike's dad, but he didn't come out right away. I waited for a long time, getting more and more frustrated. Finally, he came out and told me that I had to keep working and not blame him for not teaching me. He said life was the real teacher and that I had to learn from the experience. I was angry and confused, but he made me realize that I was the one who needed to change my mindset. He explained that the rich don't work for money, money works for them. I started to understand that my poor dad was teaching me to work for money, but Mike's dad was teaching me to make money work for me. That day, I learned a big lesson about money and life. My rich dad wanted me to learn how money works so I could make it work for me. He said I should study hard, get good grades, and find a safe job with a big company and great benefits. But my poor dad, the one who taught me to work for money, said I should do what he did. I didn't understand the difference. My rich dad said most people work for money because they're scared, scared of not paying bills, scared of being fired, scared of not having enough. He said that's why they take low-paying jobs. He said people exploit themselves, not because he exploits them. He said more money doesn't solve problems. He said look at my poor dad, he makes a lot of money, but he still can't pay his bills. He said that's why he paid me 10 cents an hour. I was angry, but he said that anger was part of learning. He said passion, fear, and anger are what drive real learning. I asked if I should pay people more, and he said no. He said if you want to learn how to have money work for you, he'd teach me, but only if I wanted to learn. I said I did. He said then I'd have to work for nothing. I was shocked. He said he'd already made Mike work for free. I didn't want to work for nothing, but I stayed. I kept working, even though I missed baseball games and couldn't afford comic books. He said he was testing me. He gave me bigger pay offers, but I refused. I realized that money wasn't everything. I realized I had to learn how to make money work for me. I didn't want to be like the people who just work and worry. I wanted to be free. I wanted to learn. I didn't say yes to the money. I stayed strong. I knew I had something more to learn. Emotion, determined and clear. Rich Dad said money isn't the real problem. It's the fear and desire that make people work so hard and never feel free. He said people are stuck in a cycle where they work for money, hoping it will stop their fears. But it never does. Instead, the fear grows bigger. He told us about a man who was poor and had to dig through trash for food. Rich Dad gave him $1, and the man was happy, but Rich Dad said he wasn't much different from the people who work all day for a paycheck. He said people say they don't care about money, but they still work 8 hours a day. That's not honesty. It's denial. He said fear and desire are the real drivers. People work because they're scared of not having money, and they want more things, more happiness, more comfort. But money can't give those things. It just makes them want more. He said even rich people are scared. They're afraid they'll lose everything. He talked about his friend who had millions but was more worried than when he was poor. Rich Dad said the answer is to stop letting fear and desire control you. You have to think, not just feel. He said school teaches you skills, but it doesn't teach you how to handle money. That's why people are stuck. He said we need to learn to use money, not be controlled by it. He gave us a picture of a donkey chasing a carrot, always looking for the next thing. He said that's how people live, always chasing money, never really free. He said the real lesson is to not let money run your life. He said we had to learn to use our minds and emotions together, not let them fight. He said fear and desire are natural, but you have to be in control. He said we had to start thinking, not just reacting. I listened carefully, trying to understand. I knew this was important. I wanted to learn how to be free. I wanted to know how to make money work for me, not the other way around. Emotion, determined and searching. Rich Dad said that poor people suffer the most because they can't afford good doctors or lawyers, so their health gets worse. He explained how rising fees for doctors and lawyers make school teachers ask for more money, which raises taxes. This creates a big gap between rich and poor, and he said this gap can cause big problems, even making civilizations fall apart. He warned that America is heading in that direction because people don't learn from history.
I asked if prices are supposed to go up, and Rich Dad said that in a smart society, prices should go down.
But he said prices go up because people are greedy and scared, and they don't know how to handle money. Schools teach people to work for money, not how to use money properly. Mike asked about business schools, and Rich Dad said they often train people to be bean counters who cut costs and raise prices, which hurts businesses. He said the real answer is to learn to use your mind instead of letting your emotions control you. He said we had to start thinking, not just reacting. He invited us to follow him into the briar patch, which he said was our fear and greed. He wanted us to choose our thoughts instead of letting emotions run our lives. He said working for money is only a short-term fix, and we had to find a better way. We started our own comic book library, charging kids to read, and made money without being paid. We learned to make money work for us instead of working for money. So here's what happened next. In 1990, Mike took over his dad's business and did a better job than his dad ever did. He and his wife are way richer than most people. Rich Dad's business is doing great, and Mike is training his son to take over, just like Rich Dad trained us. In 1994, I retired at 47, and my wife Kim was 37. Retirement doesn't mean stopping work. For us, it means we can work or not work, and our money keeps growing on its own, even when prices go up. Our money is big enough to take care of itself, like a tree that grows strong after you water it for a while. Then it can shade you without you needing to water it anymore. People often ask me how to get started with money or how to get rich. I tell them the same thing my rich dad told me when I was a kid. If you want to be rich, you need to be financially literate. That idea stuck with me. My educated dad cared about reading, but my rich dad cared about understanding money. He taught me to think, not just react. He made it simple, using pictures and few words. That helped me and Mike understand money better. Now, Mike has learned more complex stuff because he runs a big business. I don't need to know that much, but we both started with the same simple idea. Rich Dad said the most important rule is to know the difference between an asset and a liability. An asset puts money in your pocket. A liability takes money out. That's all you need to know if you want to be rich. But most people don't get it. They think buying a house or a car is an asset, but it's really a liability because it costs money to keep. If you want to be rich, you have to buy things that make money, not things that cost money. So, here's what happens next. The story talks about how people think money can solve all their problems, but it doesn't really work that way. The author says that when people get more money, they often end up spending it all right away. It doesn't fix their problems because they're still making bad money choices. The author gives an example of a young couple who think they're doing well by buying a big house and a new car. But soon they're in a lot of debt because they're spending more than they make. They keep working harder, but they're not getting ahead. Their money keeps going out, and they're stuck in a cycle where they always need more. The author explains that the real issue isn't making more money, it's how you use the money you already have. Most people don't understand the difference between things that make money, assets, and things that take money, liabilities. The author also talks about how school teaches people to work hard, but not how to make their money work for them. That's why so many smart, educated people still struggle with money. The story then goes on to talk about the author's friend, Mike, and how they learned about money from Mike's dad. He wasn't a college graduate, but he knew how to manage money well. He taught Mike and the author to think differently about money and to question what everyone else says. That's how they started to see money in a new way. So here's what I'm trying to say. Most people don't realize how much money can really hurt their lives because they feel so attached to their homes. A house is more than just a place to live, it's a big part of who we are. But when you buy a house, you're not really owning it. You're paying for it over and over again with a big loan. Even after you pay it off, you still have to pay taxes and other costs that take money away from you. That's why so many people end up stuck in a cycle where they're always working hard but never really getting ahead. My wife's parents had a similar problem. After they retired, their home taxes went up a lot. That made it hard for them to afford their retirement. They had to move, even though they didn't want to. That's what happens when you tie all your money up in a house. You can't use it for anything else, and you're always paying more than you get back. The real problem is that people think a house is an investment, but it's actually a big expense. If you spend your money on a house instead of investing in things that make money, you're missing out on chances to grow your wealth. That's why the rich get richer, and the middle class keeps struggling. So the key is to know the difference between assets and liabilities. Assets are things that bring in money, and liabilities are things that take money away. If you focus on building assets, you can become financially independent. That's how you start to really get rich. Ray Kroc, the man who started McDonald's, once gave a talk to some MBA students. He asked them, "What business am I in?" They laughed and said, "Hamburgers," but Ray said he wasn't in the hamburger business. He said his real business was real estate. He explained that the key to success was knowing where to put the restaurants. The land and location were the most important parts. McDonald's ended up owning some of the most valuable real estate in the world. Ray's story showed that the rich focus on building things that make money, not just working for someone else. The author's rich dad taught him the same thing. He said people should mind their own business, not just work for others. The poor and middle class often work hard for money, but they never build real wealth. They spend their lives working for other people, not for themselves. The author's friend learned this lesson and started buying real estate instead of just running businesses. He said the rich don't work for money, they make money work for them. The author also talked about how people often confuse their job with their business. If you work for someone else, you're not really in business. You need to own something that makes money on its own. The author warned that people who think their home is an asset are actually stuck. Their house is a big expense, not an investment. To become rich, you need to build assets like real estate, stocks, or businesses. You need to think about your asset column, not just your income. The author's rich dad explained that taxes were first taken from the rich, but over time, the middle class ended up paying more. He said people believed in the idea that the rich should pay more, like Robin Hood, but that idea made the government grow and take more money from everyone. The rich found a way to protect their money by using corporations. A corporation is just a legal paper in a lawyer's office, but it lets the rich keep their money safe. The rich used corporations to avoid paying too much tax and to grow their wealth. The author's dad was a government worker who believed in helping people, while the rich dad believed in making money work for you. The rich dad didn't fight back, he played the game smarter. He taught the author that the real power is in knowing how to use money, not just working for it. He showed the author how to use corporations to protect and grow wealth, not just pay taxes. The rich didn't let the government take all their money. They used smart strategies and legal ways to keep their money safe. The author learned that the key to becoming rich is understanding how money works and using it to build wealth, not just working for someone else. The author's rich dad taught him that being smart helps you not get pushed around. He knew the law because he followed it, and because not knowing the law was expensive. If you know you're right, you're not scared to fight back, even if you're up against Robin Hood and his merry men. The author's educated dad always told him to get a good job, work your way up the corporate ladder, and be a loyal employee. But the author didn't realize that by doing that, he'd be like a cow waiting to be milked. When he told his rich dad about his dad's advice, the rich dad just laughed and said, "Why not own the ladder?" As a kid, the author didn't get what that meant. It felt impossible and scary. But the rich dad's words stayed with him. By the time he was 15 or 16, he knew he wasn't going to follow the usual path. He didn't know how, but he was determined not to go where most of his classmates were going. Years later, after leaving the Marines and working at Xerox, he finally started to understand. He formed his first corporation, and everything made sense. He realized that working for someone else meant giving away most of your money. But by owning his own business, he could make money work for him. He sold Xerox machines, made real estate deals, and eventually bought his own Porsche. His rich dad's advice helped him escape the rat race and build real wealth. He now teaches others the same lessons, hoping to help them too. The story talks about how the rich don't just work hard, they invent money. The author shares a story about Alexander Graham Bell, who invented the telephone. He asked a big company, Western Union, to buy his invention for $100,000. The company said no, thinking it was too much. But Bell kept going, and his invention changed the world. Soon, Bell's company became huge, and the telephone became a big part of everyday life. Then the author switches to a new story about a worker who lost his job. He's worried about his family and begs to talk to the company owners. The author feels sad for him, thinking about how people are struggling with change. The author has seen this happen to many people, and it makes him think about how important it is to be brave and take risks. The author also talks about how the world is changing fast. Land was wealth a long time ago, then factories, and now it's information. The person who has the best information is the one who gets rich. But people who stick to old ideas are left behind. The author wants to help others understand this so they can take control of their money and their future. So, the author talks about a game called Cashflow that he made to teach people about money. He was giving a class when a woman came in. She was recently divorced and had a lot of problems. She didn't understand math, and when she got the boat card in the game, she thought it was great. But as the game went on, she realized the boat was costing her money. She got upset, and when she couldn't handle it, she asked for her money back. She left the class. The author explains that games are like mirrors, they show you what you need to learn. The woman didn't get the message because she was too focused on the boat and not on the numbers. After she left, her friend came back and told the author she was okay. The woman realized that her anger came from not understanding money and not knowing where her husband was hiding money. She started to see how the game reflected her life. The author talks about how people who understand money and numbers can create more options and get out of the rat race. He gives examples of people who work hard but don't get ahead because they stick to old ways. He also shares a story about how he made money in the 1990s by buying cheap houses and selling them fast. He shows how money can be created through deals and agreements, not just by working hard. He ends by saying that financial intelligence is about creating options and thinking creatively. It's not just about working hard or saving money, it's about making smart choices and seeing opportunities where others don't. During a tough time for the economy, Kim and I found a way to make money with simple deals. We did 6 quick transactions in our free time. Even though most of our money was in bigger investments, those small deals added over $190,000 in assets. That gave us about $19,000 a year in income, which we used for cars, trips, and other things. The government didn't get to tax it because we spent it before taxes came in. We made money by buying cheap houses and selling them fast. Sometimes the houses were sold again, and we made even more. The math was easy, no need for complicated stuff. The law handled the legal parts, and we didn't have to worry about fixing roofs or toilets because the owners did that. If someone didn't pay back the loan, it wasn't a problem. We could take the house back, sell it again, and make money from the difference. It was like money making money without needing a lot of cash. We kept doing this until the market changed. When real estate got better, we moved on to other opportunities. The point was to keep growing our assets, not just save money. Financial intelligence is about making smart choices, not just working hard. It's about seeing opportunities and using your brain to create options. The more you learn, the more money you can make. We talked about how it's not really gambling if you know what you're doing. It's like playing a game where you use your brain and learn the rules. If you just throw money at something and hope for the best, that's like gambling. But if you know how to pick the right deals and how to make the numbers work, then it's smart money. The key is to lower the risk. You do that by learning and thinking, not just by throwing money around. The author said that most people don't take enough time to learn. They just jump in and hope for the best. But the real money comes from people who know how to find chances others miss. Like the friend who bought a run-down house and found 4 extra lots hidden in the title. He made a lot of money in just a few months. It wasn't hard, but it took thinking and knowing how to look. The author also said that raising money isn't just about going to the bank. There are other ways, and sometimes you don't even need your own money. You can find people who want to invest in your deal and share the profit. It's all about knowing how to make deals work, not just buying things. The reporter asked me why she should learn to sell. I told her to take a sales course. She got angry. She said she had a master's degree and didn't need to learn sales. She thought I was being rude. She left the interview quickly. I felt bad because I wanted to help her. I gave her a book and some notes. She didn't take them. I didn't see her again. Later, I met a mechanic who fixed my car in minutes. He just listened and knew what was wrong. I was surprised. He didn't have a fancy degree, but he made good money. I realized that smart people don't always earn a lot. Some people with big skills still earn little. A business consultant told me that most people are just one skill away from making a lot of money. That skill could be sales, marketing, or something else. I thought about the reporter again. If she learned sales and marketing, her writing could bring in more money. She could write great stories and sell them. I told her that. She didn't listen. She was too proud. I also thought about my own path. My dad wanted me to be safe and steady. My rich dad wanted me to learn a lot. I tried different jobs, like being a sailor, a marine, and a salesperson. I learned how to lead people and make money. I started my own company. I made mistakes, but I kept going. So, the story keeps going. The author talks about how people work for money and benefits, but those jobs don't help them in the long run. He says instead, young people should look for work that teaches them skills, not just gives them a paycheck. He uses the example of a mechanic who didn't have a fancy degree but made good money because he had the right skills. He also mentions a business consultant who said most people are just one skill away from making a lot of money. That skill could be sales, marketing, or something else. He thinks back to the reporter he met earlier. He believes if she learned sales and marketing, her writing could bring in more money. But she didn't listen. She was too proud. He also reflects on his own path, trying different jobs like being a sailor, a marine, and a salesperson. He learned how to lead people and make money. He started his own company, made mistakes, but kept going. He talks about the importance of learning new skills and not getting stuck in one job. He mentions a friend who was a great artist but didn't know how to sell his work. He lost money from an ad and didn't want to learn sales. The author says that's a common problem. People focus on making better products, but don't know how to sell them. He compares the rich and poor, saying the rich know how to manage money, systems, and people. The poor focus too much on their own skills, and not enough on selling and marketing.
He believes that being able to sell is the base skill for success.
He also talks about giving and receiving, how giving money or time can bring more back. He ends by saying he became both his dads, a capitalist who loves making money and a teacher who cares about the gap between rich and poor. He blames the old educational system for the growing gap. In this part of the story, the author talks about how fear stops people from becoming rich. He says the main difference between rich and poor people is how they deal with fear. Even rich people lose money sometimes, but they don't let it stop them. Poor people, on the other hand, avoid risks because they're scared of losing. The author shares a story about his rich dad, who used to tell his kids about Texans and how they face failure head-on. He told them that losing money is part of the game, and that real winners don't let fear control them. He explained that people who are afraid of losing money end up losing it anyway because they play it too safe. The author gives examples like a golfer who keeps getting better after losing a ball, or a quarterback who learns from losing. He also talks about how failure can be a powerful motivator if you're willing to learn from it. The author says that most people are too scared to take risks, so they end up stuck in the same place financially. He encourages people to focus, not be balanced, and to take chances even if it's scary. He reminds them that the way to get rich is to be unafraid of losing and to use failure as a chance to grow. So here's what happened next. Kim and I weren't real estate agents, just investors. We found a nice townhome in a resort area for just $42,000. That was way cheaper than other similar houses. Richard, our friend, bought it and went back to Boston. But then he changed his mind. He said his neighbor told him it was a bad deal. I asked him if his neighbor was an investor, and he said no. Still, he listened. A few years later, that house was renting for over $1,000 a month, and it was worth almost $100,000. All Richard had to do was put down $5,000 to start getting out of the rat race. But he didn't do it. He kept looking and missed his chance. I've seen this happen a lot. People get scared, listen to the wrong advice, and miss out on opportunities. I invest in tax lien certificates instead of CDs. They pay 16% a year, which is way better than what banks offer. But people say it's risky. They don't understand how it works. They just copy what they hear from friends or magazines. Their doubts stop them from trying. Rich Dad always said, cynics never win. He wanted people to analyze, not just criticize. When someone says, I don't want to fix toilets, he says, what makes you think I do? That's noise. It's people avoiding what they really want. They're stuck in the rat race because they're too scared to take chances. I learned that to get rich, you have to stop fearing failure. You have to be brave, like Colonel Sanders, who kept trying even when he was turned down 1,000 times. And I learned that laziness isn't just about not working, it's about not thinking. If you don't want to work hard, you'll never get out of poverty. So here's what happened next. The story talks about how people get stuck in the same old life because they're too scared to take chances. They hear a lot of bad advice and end up missing out on real opportunities. The author says that if you know you should be doing something, you just need to ask yourself, what's in it for me? A little greed is good, it helps you get over laziness. But you can't be too greedy, or it's not good either. The author mentions Michael Douglas's line from Wall Street, greed is good. But Rich Dad said something different. Guilt is worse than greed, for guilt robs the body of its soul. He also liked what Eleanor Roosevelt said, do what you feel in your heart to be right, for you'll be criticized anyway. You'll be damned if you do, and damned if you don't. Then the story talks about habits. The author talks to Rich Dad about how people pay their bills, and Rich Dad explains that paying yourself first is key. He says if you pay yourself last, you're always in trouble. He uses the example of the 98-pound weakling who lets bullies push him around. But if you use that fear to push yourself, you get stronger. It's like working out. Every time you put in the effort, you get better. So, the story talks about how to start building wealth. The author says that finding great deals is easy, but you need to work hard to get through the first part. He shares his personal journey, saying that becoming rich wasn't easy for him either. He wants to help people find their own path to financial freedom. He talks about the importance of having a strong reason or purpose for wanting money. He gives an example of a young woman who dreamed of being an Olympian. She worked hard every day, even though it was tough. She stayed motivated because she had a reason. She wanted to be free and live the life she loved. The author says that without a strong reason, it's hard to keep going, especially when things get tough. He also talks about making daily choices. He says that with every dollar you earn, you have the power to choose your future. He shares how he used to play Monopoly as a kid and learned the difference between assets and liabilities. He says that most people don't choose to be rich because they think it's too hard or not worth it. But he believes that if you make the right choices, you can build wealth. He encourages people to invest in themselves by learning about money and investing. He also talks about the importance of choosing the right friends. He says that people who are struggling financially often don't know how to talk about money, but those who are successful usually do. He warns that poor people often spread fear and doom, but you shouldn't let that stop you. He ends by sharing how he earns a lot more than a simple savings account, showing that smart choices can lead to big rewards. The next day, someone from the state government sent me an article saying my investment was dangerous. I had been getting 16% for years, but they only got 6%. It's hard to build wealth because you have to stay true to yourself and not follow the crowd. Most people rush to jump on the latest trend, but that's when they get hurt. The best investors wait for the next wave, like surfers looking for the next big swell. They don't try to time the market. They just get ready for the next big chance. That's hard for some people because buying something unpopular feels scary. But smart investors know that when things are not popular, that's when they can make the most money. They don't care about the noise. They just keep looking for the next deal. The author talks about how people who are rich often have rich friends because that's where the money comes from. Friends give you information before the big changes happen. You need to be quick to learn and adapt. The author says that learning is like a recipe. You follow it, but you also look for new ways to make money. He used to take classes on things like real estate and trading, even when he didn't know much. But he learned a lot, and that helped him make more money. He also talks about paying yourself first. If you don't control your money, you'll never get rich. People who win the lottery often go broke because they don't plan for the future. The author pays himself first, even when things get tough. He doesn't let debt control his life. He keeps his money safe and builds his assets. He doesn't care if people think he's being too strict. He knows that true financial freedom comes from self-discipline and not giving in to pressure. So, the author talks about how to start building wealth. He says it's not about giving up everything or being too strict. Life should be enjoyed, and if you use your money smartly, you can have all the good things in life and still get rich. He says paying for good advice is important. He used to see people try to save money by doing things like selling their homes themselves or using cheap brokers. But his rich dad taught him to pay professionals because they can help make money. He has expensive lawyers, accountants, and brokers because they give him valuable information and help him make smart choices. He even gives examples, like buying land for $9,000 and selling it for over $25,000, which helped him buy a Porsche. He says most brokers are just salespeople, not real investors. He looks for people who actually own assets and understand the market. Then he talks about being an Indian giver, which means getting something for free. He gives an example of buying a condo for less than the bank asked and then renting it out to make money. He also mentions using stocks the same way, moving money in for a short time and taking it out when it's worth more. He says it's about getting your money back fast and getting something for free in the process. He admits he sometimes loses money, but he only plays with money he can afford to lose. He says the key is to focus on assets, not expenses. He ends with a story about a kid who wanted a car. Instead of giving him the car, his dad gave him $3,000 and told him to use it to invest. The kid learned about money, read books, and started making decisions about his future. Even though he lost some money, he gained knowledge and interest in investing. The dad says that's better than giving him a car right away. He talks about heroes and how they help us learn. When he was a kid, he looked up to baseball players like Willie Mays and Hank Aaron. He studied their stats, their money, and how they climbed up from the minor leagues. He even pretended to be them when he played baseball. He says this kind of pretending is a powerful way to learn, but as we grow up, we often forget about heroes. He sees kids playing basketball now and they're not just kids, they're pretending to be their favorite players. He says copying heroes is a real way to grow. As he got older, his heroes changed. He now looks up to people like Warren Buffett and Donald Trump. He reads about how they make money and how they talk to people. He says he acts like them when he's in the market or trying to make a deal. He believes that having heroes helps us tap into their genius and makes things seem easier. He also talks about giving and how it helps you get more. His rich dad always said, if you want something, you first need to give. He gives money, time, or knowledge first and then gets more in return. He says giving is like magic, it brings back more than you gave. He gives examples of how giving leads to sales, contacts, and even happiness. He says the world is a mirror of you, so if you give, you get. He talks about how people often aren't happy with just 10 steps. They want more. They want to do things, not just think about them. He says both thinking and doing are important. He likes new ideas and action. So he makes a list of things he does to get started. He says the first thing is to stop doing what you're doing. Take a break, look at what's working and what's not. He says doing the same thing over and over is like being crazy. You need to try new things. He looks for new ideas. He buys books on subjects he knows nothing about. He reads them and then tries what he learned. He says most people don't act or let others stop them. He finds people who have done what he wants to do. He talks to them, asks for tips. He takes classes, reads, and goes to seminars. He says learning is important and helps him get rich. He makes lots of offers. He says people who aren't investors don't know how to sell. He makes offers with escape clauses. He says buying and selling is like a game. He talks about how to find good deals, like looking for change in a neighborhood. He jogs around an area to see what's happening. He looks for bargains in all markets. He says profits are made when you buy, not when you sell. He talks about looking in the right places and finding people who want to buy first. He says think big, act big. He says history shows big companies started small. He says action is the most important thing. You have to do something before you get rewards. So, the author wraps up the book by talking about how money can be used smartly to solve life's problems. He shares a story about a friend who had trouble saving for his kid's college education. The friend was putting away only $300 a month and wasn't making much progress. The author suggested buying a house with some of that money instead. The friend was worried about his credit, but the author said there were other ways to get a loan. They found a house for $79,000, and the friend only needed to come up with $7,900. He rented it out and started making a little extra each month. Over time, the house's value went up, and he sold it for a lot more. He used that money to start another project, which gave him even more income to put into his kids' education. In the end, he was confident he could afford college and even retire early. The author says it all started with just a small amount of money and smart thinking. He encourages readers to learn about money, start small, and let their money work for them instead of the other way around. He reminds everyone that the key to wealth is knowing what kind of income to work for and how to protect it. He ends by saying that the choice to be rich, poor, or middle class is up to each person, and that sharing this knowledge with their kids is the best way to prepare for the future.
So there's this guy, Robert Kiyosaki, who wrote a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad that became super popular around the world.
He's not just some random person, he's an entrepreneur, teacher, and investor. He believes that the way people think about money is all wrong. Instead of just working hard and saving, he says you need to learn how to make money work for you. He talks about things like buying property, investing in businesses, and creating income streams. His ideas often go against what people are told, like your house is not an asset or savers are losers. Some people don't like his views, but over time, a lot of what he said has come true in the real world. He and Donald Trump wrote another book together called Why We Want You to Be Rich, where they share their thoughts on money and success. They don't just give you steps to follow, they want you to change the way you think about money and life. They believe that financial education is the key to freedom and that everyone has the power to choose their future. The message is clear: learn, think differently, and take control of your money. So Robert Kiyosaki wrote another book called Rich Dad's Conspiracy of the Rich. It's a big deal because it came out during one of the worst economic times in history, like the Great Depression. The book is online and has reader comments and a special Q&A chapter. It's all about how the rich are stealing your money through taxes, debt, inflation, and retirement. Robert says the rich have a secret plan to keep you poor and not understand how money works. He wants you to learn how to fight back. He talks about a conspiracy against financial education, which he says is the key to freedom. He encourages people to take control of their own money and not just accept that they're stuck. He also wrote another book called Unfair Advantage, where he talks about 5 unfair advantages that real financial education gives you. These include things like knowledge, taxes, debt, risk, and compensation. He wants you to think differently and not take life for granted. He says the power to change your life is in your hands. The book cover shows a big, bold title with a warning about the rich stealing your wealth. It's a call to action for people to wake up and take control of their money. So the book ends by telling people to go to richdad.com and get their copy. It says this is the sequel to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was a huge hit. This new book is called Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant. It explains how the way you make money, whether you're an employee, self-employed, business owner, or investor, affects your financial freedom. The book shows you how to move from being stuck in a job to becoming a business owner or investor. It's meant to help people escape the rat race of working for money and get on the fast track to financial freedom. It's a bestseller and has been praised by people like those at Wall Street Journal. The message is clear: take control of your money and your future. You don't have to live paycheck to paycheck anymore. You can be free. The book ends by telling people to go to richdad.com and get their copy. It says this is the sequel to Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which was a huge hit. This new book is called Rich Dad's Cash Flow Quadrant. It explains how the way you make money, whether you're an employee, self-employed, business owner, or investor, affects your financial freedom. The book shows you how to move from being stuck in a job to becoming a business owner or investor. It's meant to help people escape the rat race of working for money and get on the fast track to financial freedom. It's a bestseller and has been praised by people like those at Wall Street Journal. The message is clear: take control of your money and your future. You don't have to live paycheck to paycheck anymore. You can be free. Visit richdad.com for more information on coaching opportunities and education classes near you. Starting on an adventure to financial independence can be daunting. Boost your confidence and accelerate your progress with the guidance of one of Rich Dad's highly trained and motivating coaches. Discover your mission, passion, and purpose. Build a personalized investment strategy. Set your plan to financial freedom in motion. Whether you are a seasoned investor or beginning the process, partner with a Rich Dad coach to achieve your goals. Set your tomorrow in motion today with Rich Dad Coaching. The path to wealth is the knowledge learned along the way. Join the thousands who have studied the art and science of investing with Robert and Kim Kiyosaki's trainers and advisors. Learn in a hands-on environment and accelerate your learning curve. Maximize your potential by learning from those who practice what they preach. Gain exclusive access to top-tier experts. Begin your training with a free preview in a town near you. Or, participate in advanced classes in the investment category of your choice. Get a head start with a Rich Dad coach. Knowledge is the new money. The story talks about how kids don't learn about money in school. That's a big problem because money is important for life. So, the book says parents should help their kids learn about money early. It gives 2 books for teens called Rich Kid, Smart Kid and Rich Dad, Poor Dad for teens. These books teach kids how money works, the difference between things that make money and things that take money, how to think like a business person, and how to make smart choices with money. The books are meant to help kids start their journey to a better financial future. The author is telling parents they should get these books to help their kids grow up with good money habits. It's a chance to start something important early. The message is clear: money matters, and learning about it early can change a kid's life for the better. The story talks about how money is important, but kids don't learn about it in school. That's a problem. So, the book says parents should help their kids learn about money early. It gives 2 books for teens called Rich Kid, Smart Kid and Rich Dad, Poor Dad for teens. These books teach kids how money works, the difference between things that make money and things that take money, how to think like a business person, and how to make smart choices with money. The books are meant to help kids start their journey to a better financial future. The author is telling parents they should get these books to help their kids grow up with good money habits. It's a chance to start something important early. The message is clear: money matters, and learning about it early can change a kid's life for the better. Now, the book talks about a new book called Rich Woman. It's for women. The author, Kim Kiyosaki, says women face different money issues than men. This book helps women take control of their money and stop worrying about it. It says women shouldn't wait for a rich husband to take care of them. Instead, they should work for their own financial freedom. The book encourages women to be smart with money and build a secure future. It's a call to action for women to start their journey to financial independence today. The book talks about a game called Cash Flow for kids. It's made by the same authors who wrote the other books. This game helps kids learn about money in a fun way. Instead of just reading about money, kids get to play and experience it. They use play money to make choices, buy things, and see how their choices affect their money. The game teaches them about assets and liabilities, and how money moves. The author says that learning by doing is better than just reading. The game is meant to be played with kids and friends, so they can learn together. As this table shows, kids are having fun while they learn. The message is clear: learning about money is important, and it can be done in a way that's exciting and easy to understand. Play the game and help your kids grow up with good money habits. The story talks about a website called richdad.com. It says you can join a free community where people who love learning about money come together. You can talk, share ideas, and play games with others who are trying to become smarter with money. The website also has cool features like forums where you can chat, live web chats with Robert and Kim, and even new games and books from them. You can follow them on social media too, like Twitter and Facebook, to get more tips and updates. The website shows a picture of Earth surrounded by diamonds, which is a symbol of wealth and success. It's a way to connect with others who are on the same journey to learn about money and build a better future. This is a chance to grow, learn, and have fun all at the same time. This part of the story talks about how things have changed a lot since Robert Kiyosaki first wrote his book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, back in 1997. He said some really bold things, like, "Your house is not an asset," which made a lot of people really upset. But he kept going, and in 2002 he wrote another book called Rich Dad's Prophecy that warned about a big financial crash. Then in 2006, he teamed up with Donald Trump to write Why We Want You to Be Rich, because they were worried about people losing their middle-class life in America. A lot has happened since then. Houses were losing value, people were losing their homes, and the whole economy was in trouble. Robert's ideas started to make more sense, and a lot of people who once doubted him started to believe in what he was saying. He realized that even though his message has stayed the same, the world of investing and money has changed a lot. That's why he decided to update an important part of his book, Chapter 5, which is about the 5 levels of investors. He wants to make sure people understand how to grow their money in today's world. So, what do you want to be when you grow up? That's a question most of us have been asked. I had lots of interests as a kid, and it was easy to choose. If something sounded exciting and glamorous, I wanted to do it. I wanted to be a marine biologist, an astronaut, a marine, a ship's officer, a pilot, and even a professional football player. I was lucky enough to achieve 3 of those goals: a Marine Corps officer, a ship's officer, and a pilot. I didn't want to be a teacher, a writer, or an accountant. I didn't like school, I failed English twice, and I dropped out of my MBA program because I couldn't stand accounting. But here's the funny part: now that I'm grown up, I've become everything I never wanted to become. Even though I didn't like school, I own an education company. I teach around the world because I love teaching. Even though I failed English, I'm best known as an author. My book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, was on the New York Times bestsellers list for over 7 years and is one of the top 3 best-selling books in the US. And here's another irony: my book and my cash flow board game are about accounting, which I struggled with. So what does that have to do with your life's goal? Well, the answer is in a simple saying from a Vietnamese monk: the path is the goal. That means finding your path in life is your goal. Your path isn't about your job or how much money you make. It's about finding out what you were put here to do. What's your purpose? Why were you given life? And what gift do you give back? Looking back, I realized school wasn't about finding my path. I went to military school, trained to be a ship's officer. If I had stayed on oil tankers or flown for the airlines, I'd never have found my path. I'd never have become an author or started an education company. Finding your path is what this book is about. It's not about getting a job in the E or S quadrant. It's about finding your real purpose. In 1973, after the war, I wanted to follow my rich dad's footsteps. I took real estate and business courses on weekends, ready to become an entrepreneur. I also took a personal development course, hoping to find out who I really was. The instructor showed a simple diagram: mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. She said we need all 4 to be whole human beings. I realized that school only focused on the mental part. That's why so many students do well in school but not in life, especially with money. I hated school because it was all about grades and fear. It was crushing my spirit. I realized that traditional education wasn't for entrepreneurs. That's why so many successful people like Edison, Ford, Jobs, Gates, Disney, and Zuckerberg never finished school. After that seminar, I knew I needed to change. I wanted to become a kinder, gentler person. It was hard because I had been trained to be tough and strong. I never went back to traditional education again. I only went to learn, to become a better person. I wasn't chasing grades or degrees anymore. I had no desire to study for them again. I was no longer in the paper chase of credentials. In 1973, after the war, I wanted to follow my rich dad's footsteps. I took real estate and business courses on weekends, ready to become an entrepreneur. I also took a personal development course, hoping to find out who I really was. The instructor showed a simple diagram: mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. She said we need all four to be whole human beings. I realized that school only focused on the mental part. That's why so many students do well in school, but not in life, especially with money. I hated school because it was all about grades and fear. It was crushing my spirit. I realized that traditional education wasn't for entrepreneurs. That's why so many successful people like Edison, Ford, Jobs, Gates, Disney, and Zuckerberg never finished school. After that seminar, I knew I needed to change. I wanted to become a kinder, gentler person. It was hard because I had been trained to be tough and strong. I never went back to traditional education again. I only went to learn, to become a better person. I wasn't chasing grades or degrees anymore. I had no desire to study for them again. I was no longer in the paper chase of credentials. This part of the book talks about why a path is important. The author shares a story about a classmate from the Merchant Marine Academy. He didn't want to spend his life at sea, so he went to law school and became a lawyer. He worked hard, but he hated his job. He had a family and bills to pay, so he kept working even though he didn't enjoy it. He died young, angry, and unhappy.
The author uses this story to show how people can get stuck in jobs they don't like, and how traditional education doesn't help them find their true path.
The author also talks about how changing quadrants, like moving from the E quadrant, employee, to the B quadrant, business, is hard. People are often scared to take risks or leave their comfort zones. The author mentions how his family didn't support his decision to become an entrepreneur. They worried about job security and money. But the author learned that emotional and spiritual growth is just as important as mental and physical development. The author talks about how money comes from different places and how that shapes our lives. He explains there are 4 groups people fall into. One group gets money from working for someone else, like a boss. Another group makes money by running their own business or being self-employed. The other 2 groups get money from owning businesses or investments. The author uses a story about 2 men, Ed and Bill, to show the difference between these groups. Ed works hard, hauling water with buckets, trying to make ends meet. He's happy with his work, but he's stuck. Bill, on the other hand, builds a system that brings water to people without him having to do all the work. He creates a pipeline that brings money to him automatically. The author uses this story to show that working hard doesn't always mean working smart. He encourages people to think about whether they're just carrying buckets or building pipelines that bring money in. He explains how changing from one group to another is hard, especially when people are used to a certain way of life. The author shares how his family didn't understand his choice to become an entrepreneur. They were worried about money and stability, but he learned that growing emotionally and spiritually is just as important as making money. The author wants to help people move from working for others to creating their own path to financial freedom. He believes that understanding where your money comes from is the first step to making better choices for your future.